Hey everybody, Andy Kvernen here with another Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. Have you ever experienced a setback in your life, maybe on a project that you were working on, maybe you were in a group of people and you were building towards something, and then all of a sudden, just as you thought you were done, you realized you had a lot more work to do? Christy and I moved into a house back in 2004. It was our first home, and we painted all week when we moved into that house. It was a big job, but it felt good because it was our home. We were working on something that we were going to live in for a long time, and we got to the end of the week, and we were so excited. Now, along the way, through that week, we realized there was carpet in the kitchen, and that's something that just wasn't going to work. We had toddler boys. They were maybe just a little over a year old at the time. Christy kept saying, we just can't do this. It's going to make a mess. We're not going to be able to keep it clean. We need to do something different with the kitchen, Andy. And I kept saying, you know what, let's just get through the paint. I can't even think about how much that would cost. I don't think we can do it, honey. Let's just wait. And we kind of had this back and forth all week. Well, we got to the end of the week, and we were done painting, and I was holding my ground, and Christy was holding hers, and we got to the end, and I got to my literally last brush stroke, and I had a paint bucket up on top of a ladder, and I took that last brush stroke, I dipped it in the paint, went up on the wall, it was done, and I was excited, and I looked over at Christy, and I said, yay, we're done, and I threw my hands up in the air, and wouldn't you know it, I knocked over that paint can, and you know where we were? We were in the kitchen. Christy was going to get a new floor. It was inevitable at that point. I had a setback. I thought I was done, but I had a lot more to do. In the Gospels, friends, Jesus and the disciples experience a setback. John the Baptist has been the forerunner of Jesus. He and Jesus are cousins. Their ministries are intimately connected at this point. And John the Baptist gets thrown in prison, and ultimately he gets executed. There's a setback here. And the text in Matthew 14 I think indicates Jesus' state of mind at losing John the Baptist. It says, when Jesus heard what had happened, in verse 13, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. I mean, we can imagine, right? Jesus loses his cousin. It's quite a setback. He's been pouring out his life. He's been speaking to the masses, telling them about the kingdom of God. And here, one of his main partners, John the Baptist, is murdered in a really awful kind of a way. Well, you know what happens next? It says in verse 14, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and he healed their sick. Jesus experienced a setback. He was tired. He wanted to be done, perhaps, at least from a human perspective. But you know what? There was more to do. There was a whole nother crowd that needed to be ministered to. And the text says in verse 14 that he saw them and he had compassion on them. Now, in the Gospel of Matthew, the scene moves from Jesus' more public ministry to now ministering more specifically to his disciples. Jesus has offered the kingdom to the Israelites, to the Jews. They've rejected him, indicated in part by Herod executing John the Baptist. They've rejected the kingdom of heaven. Now Jesus is preparing his disciples to take up the mantle of the kingdom in order to bring it to the Gentiles. Jesus would have a small part in setting, obviously not a small part, a huge part in setting the table for that, but he would not be the one primarily who brought the gospel to the Gentiles. That would be his disciples. That would be the apostles. Here the apostles are with Jesus. They're experiencing this setback together. Here the crowd comes and there's more ministry to do. At this point, I want you to notice what Jesus does with his disciples. Verse 15, as evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food. Listen to how Jesus replied. People are hungry. Disciples see a problem. They don't know what to do with it. Send them away. Let them fend for themselves. Here's what Jesus says. They don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. Me? If I'm one of the disciples, I'm thinking, me, Jesus? How am I supposed to give him something to eat? I don't have any food. I don't have enough money to go purchase. All we got are these 5 loaves and these 2 fish. In fact, that's what they say in verse 17. But Jesus says, well, bring him here. Watch this. Verse 18, bring him here to me, he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven. And he gave thanks, and he broke the loaves. And then he gave to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. And they all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Friends, Jesus and the disciples had a setback. It was tragic, the loss of John the Baptist. But you know what Jesus meant to do? He meant to teach the disciples, look, when life gets tough, when you experience adversity and pain and trial, I'm going to be here for you. And actually, you're not going to know what to do all the time. You're going to carry the mantle of the gospel out into the world. And there are going to be times where, yeah, you do not have the resources, but guess what you do have? You have me. And so whatever meager resources you have, be it 5 loaves and 2 fish, be it whatever is out there with you, you put that in my hands and watch what I can do. Friends, when you experience a setback, rather than run away from God, rather than maybe feeling dejected, let's be the kind of people that instead turn to Jesus and we give Him what we have and then we watch Him work. That's what I want for myself. That's what I want for you. Anytime we face rejection, friends, Jesus has the solution. We can trust Him. God bless you, and Lord willing, we'll see you again soon on the Cornerstone Connection.